Okay, I think you are going to really enjoy this video, especially the last game, which I'm going to save for last because I think it is the most epic of them all. But this is a good set of games here. So anyway, if you stick around for the end of the video, I will bring up the deck list and you can check that out. For those who are familiar, this is the Edric deck. I am going to be playing, it looks like, second, and my cards will be at the top of the game in this game due to the replay glitch. I'm going to play 7 games for you. The best one to come. So my opponent's playing Damia, Sage of Stone, and I have a very powerful, keepable hand. So I come just roaring out the gates with incredible mana production. What do I have? 4, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 mana on turn 3. Seems pretty good. 14 mana on turn 3? Yeah. I use GTA to try to bait since he's got blue, and I wasn't sure, if I would get a counter with that or not. I was hoping I would, and then I just run out gigantic Court of Calling for the win. But since I don't get a counter, I go ahead and just cast Edric and equip the GTA and send everybody except for the priest so I can get an Ancestral off before he sweeps away my board. And then I cast Wirewood Boreal Druid, making a token, figuring that if he does sweep the board away, then he's in the game. Doesn't necessarily win it. But if he doesn't, then it's clearly over. And so while I'm going, I chord for 3 and get a Trinket Mage to make recovery easier. And finally I pass a turn. Should he sweep. So he plays Tutor, and it's not Damnation, and I'm happy, and I'm pretty sure that epic turn 3 has sealed the deal. So I send in a bunch, and I don't know if you're noticing, but something very cool is about to happen. Well, okay, that's very cool. But I'm going to Soul Ring, land, Snapcaster the Court of Calling, tap Cradle and the other thing. And I meant to Court of Calling for Terastodon, but I accidentally misclick and Court of Calling for 1, exiling it. I could have Terastodon right here. So I just play Wirewood, Llanowar Elf, Sword, untap, replay, equip, level up this guy all the way to level 5, pass for the turn. And I've got a counter spell up 1, and this Arbor Elf can pump it for 2. I can even untap if he had like Mana Leak and a spell I had to counter. I could untap the Priest and counter as well. But none of that happens, so it's a disgusting turn. I just send everybody and he gives up turn 5. Seems like a reasonable thing to do there. I'm not quite sure why I had that game in here other than the fact that I thought it was super cool that I could Court of Calling early for ramp and then untap and Court of Calling with, flash it back and Court of Calling for a gigantic, Terastodon fetch. Although, as it turns out, I misclicked. It's pretty cool. So here I'm playing against Dave the Head, and I remember this game was really good. I had a mulligan, obviously, perfect hand with any land. And then this is a keeper. Oh yeah, this game was great actually. So check this out. I keep this, risky hand, but I'm going first, and I Zenith for Arbor, which resolves. And he goes first turn, Sarah Ascendant. Now normally this card gives Edric fits, but thanks to a recent change of Gilded Drake, nope, my Sarah Ascendant. You have the 3/3. I'll keep the 6/6 with lifelink. So I'm thinking like he's probably just gonna find a way to kill this, and that's fine. But if he doesn't, I mean, look at the power of the board position I'm in. There's very few cards that actually kill this, but most of them are in white and black, so there's a good chance he'll do it. I wasn't banking on him ripping this right on time and sweeping away my stuff. So I put Gilded Drake on the bottom with an Arbor underneath of it, figuring I'd rather draw a Gilded Drake if we get that far down. And top deck, Green Sun Zenith. How cool is that? So I'm able to Green Sun Zenith the Arbor right back into play because he put it on the bottom with Terminus. How funny. So he gets a Lightning Greaves down and I draw mana, and now It's like, so first couple of turns are just like they never even happened. Minus the fact that he's short on cards and I'm not. Then I refill my hand, getting even more mana. And I pick up Edric in order to cast Priest. It's kind of a weird techie play, but basically what that does is I can just cast Edric and attack with everybody next turn. So I have the same number of attackers, but I have the potential of generating additional mana with Priest next turn. And also, if my opponent happened to have a sweep, another Wrath effect, I could Wirewood the Priest, assuming I couldn't Spiketail it, and he would kill, these 3 cards, but not, I would still be left with both Priest and Edric, my 2 best cards, so, 2 best creatures rather. So I draw a Bloom Tender. I figured, nah, I'm just gonna attack and get some cards. And then, so I find a land. So I Edric up the Priest yet again, and cast Bloom Tender and pass. Same reasoning as last turn. But now, Priest will tap for 2. So Edric comes down. Can you please close that door? Yes. Sorry. Edric comes down, and I cast Strange Hermit. Send in the team for some more cards. Another Ancestral. Can't really do too much of that. Pick up Strange Hermit and then tap for 4 mana and cast Arayo. Winter Orb, flipping Arayo. Counterspell ready. It doesn't look like Counterspell's ready, but if I Wirewood to untap Priest, I can tap the Priest and pump it into the Flooded Grove in order to get 2 blue for a Counterspell, or in this case I would use Forbid with buyback. Alternately, I could Wirewood Bloom Tender and counter that way. So even if he has like removal for either of the cards, he would not be able to remove. I would pick up whichever one he targeted to untap the one he didn't target and still have a Counterspell ready to rock and roll. So, of course, Dust to Dust is countered and he gives up. But I thought that was pretty cool. Was to think about that. He had Sarah Ascendant and then a board sweep when all I had was an Arbor, leaving me with just a land, and a few turns later, here we are. Also shows why I really like Gilded Drake. So here was a game here. I have been really liking it. It just does some really powerful things early on. Anyway, so here was a game playing against Niv Mizzet. Looks like my hand will be up at the top again. So I mulligan it away and keep this hand. It's a very awkward hand against him over there. But I felt comfortable with it because I have this control magic and a way to pick up creatures. And I figured in these colors, he'll have removal, of course, but he would likely have theft. I figured this would be a good anti-theft hand. So end of his turn, I go ahead and just fetch Pool. I was thinking of getting Arbor, but then I didn't want to have him just like bolt it or something and set me back. So play my commander. He plays Aether Flash, and I'm so glad I didn't, like play Equilibrium right there, thinking I'd play the commander next turn. So whenever a creature comes into play, Aether Flash deals 2 damage to it. Basically all of my creatures are now doomed. The only thing that I have that can get around that, other than like the clone of one of his guys, is my Gilded Drake, which I then give to him in exchange for whatever he's got. Terastodon can get around it, of course. Garrick can get around it by producing 3/3 beasts, and Glenny can get around it because she'll die and pop back into play, and that's it. That's all I've got. Everything else is pretty much done for. Excuse me. This doesn't look too good, but fortunately Edric made it into play, and look at that, right off the top. So I attack and draw a card, and leaving. I use this so that I can leave a blue back for Mystical. Natural Order saves the day. Goodbye, Aether Flash. Goodbye, dual mana producer. And I killed the Eye of Ramos just because it's, I don't know. I mean, I could have killed the Conclave or the Mountain. It was kind of a tough call on that one, but the Eye gets around Winter Orb, and maybe I'll be orbing at some point, so I went that route. Now, the cool thing with Terastodon is in Equilibrium now is that if I play Equilibrium, after that, I can start nullifying all the elephants. I mean, in a couple of creatures, there won't be any elephants there. So I rather like that. But he bounces Terastodon onto my hand, and this is gonna give him some damage from tempo, but bouncing a Terastodon 2, 3, 4, 5 is pretty risky. So we'll see how that works out for him. So into turn I Mystical 4, Zenith, and then I Zenith for 5 so that I can shut the damage off from the elephants, or at least buy myself enough time. I'm already up to 6 mana, so 2 more mana and I get another Terastodon. Plus, all I need is a little time, I can deploy my Equilibrium. Either way. So he, oddly enough, Lightning strikes a Squirrel and not the Hermit, which doesn't allow him to get through for damage there too easily. And I decide I'm going to let the Hermit go, though. Find myself a Pod. So down comes EQ, and Pod, and then I pod a Squirrel, fetching Draga Tree Speaker, and eating some damage. I throw a Chomper in front of one of them just to, you know, kind of protect the life total. So from here, I play Shackles and level up Draga and pass for the turn, I think. No, get it, sack a land, and then pod away a Squirrel. So I can get a Wirewood. So now I can start recasting the Draga and EQing his elephants. Boom, 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 boom. But I also have the Shackles to threaten to just take one and block the other one. And because this is active, I can tap it for 2 and then I'll still have 2 mana available for a leak. So I'm feeling pretty good now. 9 life here. He plays Hidden Strings, which taps both of my guys, and he can imprint it. I go ahead and just tap for mana. Could also use it to untap. And Hidden Strings is weird. It's actually a pretty good card. You can use it like a Soul Ring. But I decided not to take his Hidden Stringed Elephant because I would like to. I was thinking I would like to take it and keep it with my Shackles. So what I do is I untap my Wirewood and decide that what I'm just going to do is this. Block and chump. There's only one left. I've already picked up my guy. I don't need to worry about doing too much of that nonsense. So just EQ that off the board and get down with pod into a Sylvan Ranger so that I can continue to hit land drops. Basically what I'm thinking now is I can take my time and protect my life total, and I'm going to win the game. If he casts a creature, I don't care. I'll just play Edric and put it back in his hand. I'm just going to continue to build my mana base up, and then I'm going to Terastodon for the conclusion to this one. So I pod that away and go get Trinket, continuing to build the mana base. But since the goal is also mana suppression, instead of getting Soul Ring, I get Strip Mine, and that gives me 1 less thing to have to worry about, 2 less mana to be forced to leave untapped in order to protect my life. And it was right on time. He gets Torch Fiend, and I decide I'm just going to let it go. He can go ahead and kill the pod. That's fine. Because I now have the exact amount of mana I want. Equilibrium Force has no other choice but to target this, but that doesn't mean I have to pay the mana. Although it's kind of reasonable to, you know, make that a consideration. In this case, though, I just Terastodon comes down. And what I would do is kill Mountain Island and my Ancient Tomb, since it's no good to me anymore. And then Shackles one of the elephants, and I would be left with 2 elephants and a Terastodon to his 1 elephant and 1 mountain. And seeing that he was going to have no mana, he gives up. So we're almost to the most epic game. So this guy Flip-Flop Blob, rather, is playing Thassa. And I have a fantastic hand because, well, it has Soul Ring in it. He gets first turn Leyline. I mean, as bad as these Leylines are in 60 card decks where you can play 4 of them, they're just so terrible in 100 card decks where you get to play 1 of them. And this one here, he basically mulliganed because he can play all his cards as an instant, but he has 1 less card in his hand. So I mean, I don't know. I don't care for it much. You'll see that if this card were a land, he'd be much better off this game. So I play a Wirewood, figuring there's very little here that I would counterspell, even though he can play his Thassa. And what I wanted to do is get a Wirewood on board to make it so that I can cast Edric, and if he has even if he has instant speed control magic effects, I'll be able to protect Edric with Wirewood, because the last thing I want is for him to actually steal Edric. So he gets his Stasa, scries, and puts his card on the top of the library. Passes for the turn, so I go ahead and just fetch up a Arbor, and then draw Cradle, giving him a little more time to before I can counter anything, but figured I'd go for it. I mean, I was thinking about what could block here. Trinket Mage, yeah, and then most of the rest of the things that could block here have probably got 1 toughness and end up representing a trade, so I just go for that. He doesn't have a block though, he's got Curfew, so I have to bounce a creature back to my hand. And because I'm worried about control magic, I bounce Dryad Arbor, get my card, and draw Court of Calling. And this is going to be a bomb later. And so that must have been the card he put on top. So now he puts a card on the bottom. He's obviously digging for land. Doesn't find any, but has a Muldrifter. And there's a land, but that's a crappy one. That's one of the reasons why we don't play that land, folks. Unless you're playing green. If you're playing Omnath, mono green, then play Temple, for sure. Alright, so I draw, and I don't really want to trade off an Edric for a Muldrifter, even though I can pick him up again, because it's a mana source with the Cradle. So I go ahead and just play an island, and then cast Court of Calling for 3, and go get myself a Viridian Shaman to keep the pressure on his mana going. Pass for the turn. Also, the nice thing about this is that now, if he does get another artifact, I can pick up and recast. So what I haven't realized yet, in case you're wondering, is that this is about to turn on. It can turn on at any moment, as a matter of fact. And I'm not playing around that fact, and it may bite me. But yet again, I decide I am going to not leave mana up for counterspell, because I need all of my mana, and you will see why. And the reasoning is, I think that he's going to spend some mana at the end of my turn, and that's what I want. And that is exactly what he does, I think. Nope, he does not. Well, okay, so I get to untap. So I play Wooded Foothills, and then I send in Viridian Shaman, because I'm doing the math, and you probably see what's coming. But yeah, I'm trying to clear out the Muldrifter. I'm trying to get him to tap mana specifically, but if I clear out the Muldrifter, I can just start sending my guys. He'll have to tap mana in order to make blockers at that point. And he goes for, yeah, there we go. So he goes for Counterbalance. So in response, I fetch up a Breeding Pool and pay the life, and then do something really crazy. Snapcaster for Chord. So who needs Leyline when you've got cards like Snapcaster and Court of Calling, right? Snapcaster for Chord, and then Court of Calling. Court of Calling temporarily turns all your creatures into Gaia's Cradles. It like puts an invisible Gaia's Cradle into play, basically. It stacks with Cradle you already have. So I chord for X's 8. Having mana problems, bud? Let me help you out with that. How horrible is that? So, and then I think about Counterbalance, and I'm just like, sure, whatever, have a Counterbalance, dude. But what I don't realize is that makes 5, which means he's got an active Thassa who's indestructible and is going to be there to block my Terastodon. So not countering this was a big mistake. And all of a sudden my deck decides to just totally run out of gas. So I send the whole thing in thinking that he only has 3 elephants. But he's able to throw elephant in front of this guy, that guy, and Thassa here. And I'm really unhappy because I really didn't want to trade off Wirewood Symbiote. And I think about picking up Edric in order to keep him alive and not have to replay him. And then I realize if I do that, of course, if I pick up Edric, of course, I won't get to draw 2 cards. So at this point, I'm actually in kind of bad situation here. So I draw my 2 and find a Lano or Elf. This is not the magical solution I was hoping for. So go ahead and cast Elf to test the waters with his Counterbalance. He doesn't have a 1-drop on top, Draining Welk. And then just in case he thought he might have some sort of answer for Edric, I play him through the cavern. Pass the turn. So I know he's got a Draining Welk in his hand. That's not a threat. The only possible threat is if the top card of his library is a problem for natural order. So what I do is order up, and he's got no answer. He's got an island though. And fetch myself. So what do you get? What do you get? What do you get? Well, I'll tell you. I thought about Deranged Tournament, and I thought about Witness, and I thought about Oracle of Moldiah. Those were the main ones that I considered. So looking at the board, what do you go for? Well, I chose Hermit because I figured I could draw so many cards off of a Hermit. So now I go ahead and just recast Edric, pumping him through the cavern again. Don't have to worry about getting countered there. Anyway, so I figure, not that it matters that much on this particular turn. I figure what I'll do is I'll just draw so many cards, I'll find the solution that I want. I could have gotten Witness there, but Terastodon's not dead, and that's really the main card that I want. So, pass for the turn. He gets an island and has to say go again. And I go ahead and just pay for that go with the Cradle. And then send the whole mess his way. So he goes for Rapid Hybridization, and this would totally break me off here, because if this thing resolves and Edric dies, although I get a 3/3, he's going to have the option of, killing 4 of my guys here, and I draw nothing, or potentially taking a little less damage, jumping the Terastodon, or thumping the Terastodon with Thassa, and killing 3 of my guys, and I get nothing but damage, meaningless damage. So I go for Counterspell, and luckily he doesn't have a 2-drop on the top of his deck, and Edric stays alive, so I'm able to smack and draw 6. Monster Brainstorm, and this game is over. So I play a land. I play Cloud of Fairies. We already know the top card is land, so I go ahead and tap this with Cloud of Fairies' ability on the stack, since he won't be able to counter my elves, and of course I'm going to tap Guy's Cradle there, and then cast myself an uncounterable Oracle, and I still have the Cavern of Souls ready to go again. So I reveal Arbor Elf. Not too exciting there, but I'm able to tap 9 mana and cast Edric, and then I go ahead and just throw a GTA down. Pass for the turn, giving him 1 more turn. Since I know his top card's Island, and so my top card being Green Sun Zenith, I draw for the turn. I cast an Arbor Elf first to see what's going on with Counterbalance. He's got a Memnarch. I have nothing that costs 7 in here, so we don't have to sweat that one. And that is what I wanted to see. So, Cradle gets me plenty of mana, and I cast Eternal Witness in order to pick up a Counterspell. Because what I want to do is make sure that this Phyrexian Metamorph goes through, and he just gives up. I ask him if he gives up because I actually saw his name go red. He started a new game with someone else, and so he just does give up. But the plan there was pick up the Counterspell, and then from there slam that Metamorph down, cloning Terastodon, and thumping land all over again, or probably land Counterbalance because it's annoying. Anyway, that was a pretty awesome game, but it is not the most awesome of these games. It was very cool though, and a very strong showing for Court of Calling, which I've been very happy with lately. So here I'm playing against this guy again. I think he thought that game was luck, so like as soon as I start a new game he shows up to play another one, or maybe he didn't think it was luck and he just wanted to see how he could do in another game, which I also understand the sentiment of. But unfortunately for him, I get Cavern, and then he draws Lightning Greaves, so I just make those go away with an uncounterable Viridian Shaman rather, which leaves him open for a Power Stone. Now I feel kind of dumb. Oh well. So Edric comes down, and I get to draw 2, I have no way to play everything in my hand, so just throw away forest. He's ramping up pretty good and disrupts me on the threat side there with killing my cavern, but I have Crucible. So play Crucible, leaving counter mana up. Let him have his Thassa. Let him have his Druidic Satchel. Not realizing exactly how actually totally cool these two cards work in tandem, but that's fine. End of turn I'm able to play Scrib. I've got things I want to do anyway, so end of turn I play Scrib and then fetch up land, equip that Scrib with Sword of Fire and Ice, and clear out Solemn. So now that Solemn's gone, next turn I can send the whole team and go crazy with it. And although it may not look like it, I do have a counterspell ready to go because I can pick up this land, untap this forest, and then tap for 2 mana and counter here. So he, using Thassa's ability, is able to predict correctly that his top card's a land. Spend 2 mana to get 1 more back for the rest of the game. That sounds like a hell of a good deal to me. And he plays Pithing Needle, naming Sword of Fire and Ice. I was really hoping he wouldn't name Scrib, luckily he doesn't. So if he can detach the sword from the Scrib, I won't be able to equip the sword any further. So here comes the swing, and he has a cryptic command to bounce sword and tap all my guys, keeping me off of drawing and also basically disenchanting the sword. Of course, that's one I need to counter, and he's got Pact of Negation. So it's going to resolve. Sword is basically shut down. But I can still attack this turn. I just untap my guy. And then misclick and attack with nothing. How awesome is that? And since I did that, I go ahead and fetch myself a map. I think I fetch map more often than I fetch Soul Ring or Mana Crypt with Trinket Mage. Mainly because, you know, map generally produces a hell of a lot more mana than Soul Ring or Mana Crypt does. Those are the fallbacks. So he's got to pay his Pact, but he uses his little satchel trick to sneak a Nykthos into play. No big deal. And if you're wondering about the music, my son is playing in his playpen. My wife is highly amused. I actually am too. Anyway, so finally I can send the guys, and here they come. Draw 6 for 0 mana is fairly good, I'd say. Probably better than any other draw spell in the game. And yeah, this looks like it's about over. So how are we going to finish him off? Well, fetch myself a Cradle. Get that Cradle down there. Hopefully stop misclicking this game. Merchant Scroll for Muddle. And Muddle transmutes, if we will. Oh, play Priest, transmute Muddle, cast Winter Orb. And pass for the turn. And that is how you finish him off. So looking at that, he does not want to keep going. Nice thing here is you can Scrib to untap the Arbor, picking up the Trop, untap this for the turn, Scrib to do the Arbor, pick up the Trop, play the Trop as your land for the turn, and you've got, you know, all that mana available if you want. Although in this particular case, finding lands to play was not the issue. So almost there. All these games were just so good, though. I figured, you know, I've got to put them all out. I just didn't want to leave anything out. So here I'm playing against Gisela, Blade of Gold Knight, run by J.L. Nicholson there. And if that's Jack Nicholson, maybe it is. That'd be cool. So I play first turn Arbor Elf, but of course I can't actually use it till I can manage to get a forest into play. My opponent proves that he's keenly aware of this, as you'll see. So Hinterland Harbor, not so good. Coming into play tap there, but I really didn't think I would want to play a City of Brass and a Cloud of Fairies because I've got Trinket Mage in my hand. And I figured I'd save Cloud for Gaia's Cradle. So play Trinket and go fetch my map, as I do so very often. And he, holding Ghost Quarter, obviously doesn't want to use it and give me a forest. So he uses it for mana, and that gives me the chance to Cradle, but I realize if I play land, tap 2 for Cradle, play the Cradle, I can tap it for 2, but I won't have enough mana to actually Cloud of Fairies. So the weird thing is I end up having to play the Cloud of Fairies anyway prior to using the Cradle. And the reasoning is I can go get this and then play this and get my Rofellos down, which doesn't seem very good since I have no forest, even further like making this bad thing for my opponent to be using. But it is a mana source. It is a Mox Rofellos, thanks to Gaia's Cradle. So my opponent obviously sees how badly I want a forest and decides not to Ghost Quarter my Cradle. So here's the thing. Forest would give me 1, 2 mana extra. Cradle would give me 4. So if you're going to try to disrupt my mana base, disrupt my mana base. Don't do that. I think the reason he doesn't is because he misses a land drop, though. And that would be too much tempo loss for him. Sadly, I'm able to play the Witness on map. Thought about holding it for Cradle and decide against. And then Garruk Wildspeaker. Now the Cradle's producing 5, and then I untap this, and I know he must have thought about smoking it right there, but he lets her go. I play map, and he's got Artifact Blast. What is this madness? I don't know, but I'm glad I regrew the map. So down comes Birthing Pod. I claim away his Skull Clamp. Pod away Witness, and Witness for another like kind of techie play. Metamorph on Cloud of Fairies, floating a blue, and then untapping Cradle and a blue. So now I can play Tezzeret, and what I'm going to do with Tezzeret is I'm going to get I'm probably going to get, I'm thinking about it, Sword of Fire and Ice, or Sword of Feast and Famine, or Jite. I was really unable to decide, but I've got 2 floating, so, you know, whatever I want to do, right? Well, my opponent doesn't give me the chance to figure it out. Says I have too much firepower and he has not enough mana. Seems like a fair assessment to me. And now finally, if you've stuck around for this whole thing, here is the epic conclusion. We're going to have the glitch again. My hand is going to be at the bottom and my cards will be at the top. Playing against Talrand, I keep a, you know, sketchy draw, but it's got like things to do. Going first is definitely keepable, but I'm going second, and so it's probably a mistake. So I Zenith for an Arbor, cross my fingers and hope this Bloom Tender hits, and it does. Whew. Okay. And this is not how you want to be playing Magic. Cross my fingers and hope Draga plays. Cross my fingers and hope is not the way to play. So I've got a Draga down, and I mean I have a lot of mana, but none of it's blue, and I don't have a lot to do with it. He plays Runechanter's Pike. Still have nothing to do, so I figure he left 2 mana up instead of playing his Talrand. So it's fairly conspicuous, so I have to assume he drew a 2 mana counterspell there, and so I go to bait it out using Skull Clamp. And considering all my 1 toughness guys and my mana short, I think it's very reasonable for him to counter this here, and he does. But that opens me up, fortunately, for Birthing Pod. So now I have to pod away a mana source, and the tough decision here is like, what one do I do? So I thought about killing Bloom Tender in order to get Trinket Mage, so I could get, you know, Crypt or Soul Ring. But what I really want to do is get a blue permanent into play for Bloom Tender, so that I have access to blue mana. And Soul Ring doesn't really get me there, so I decide I'm actually going to. And then I was thinking about Arbor, but if I kill Arbor, I could get a Bird of Paradise as a possible out. And in hindsight, that would have been best. But what I decide I'm going to do is I'm going to kill the Draga Tree Speaker, and the reasoning is, even though he produces 2 mana, I can get a Sylvan Ranger and actually hit a land drop for the first time in this game. And now, when I untap, I'm in a great shape. You know, I can pod Sylvan into Trinket just like I wanted, get myself a Soul Ring or a Crypt, and then Bloom Tender will produce 2 mana at that point, and I'm in lovely shape there. I've got blue mana to back it up with a counter. Bloom will make 2. I can cast Edric, attack and draw a card. Totally squared away, right? I even have Snap for the trinket, so I can get even more mana. Or Snap his Tower Hand. What I wasn't accounting for was this. Ouch! 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 Here it comes. We knew that was going to happen. But like I've said many times, you don't want to play something in a deck unless you can be prepared to face the thing that you're playing in your deck used against you. And this deck is certainly prepared for that. So if I can draw an island, I can tap 2 mana here, snap this back to my hand, cast Edric, and draw 4 cards right off the bat and just end this game. Like, giving a bunch of elephants to the Edric deck is very, very dangerous. So simply drawing an island here totally wins the game. And if I draw a forest here, I just play Eternal Witness. I can pick up my island, and then we're good from there. That's neither island nor forest. Guess I'm done. So he plays Tower End. And I draw neither island nor forest. I guess I'm done. So he plays Glenelendra, and it looks like this game is probably over. And I draw island. Holy crap, I drew an island. So, knowing that Glen cannot counter creatures, and Runechanter's Pike is a long way from being threatening, I go ahead and cast Arayo, because now I can get my blue permanent that I need to play to make Bloom Tender become, all that it's meant to be. So I cast Arayo, and my opponent does the stupidest thing possible. Hooks me up. He taps out for greed. End of turn. So if you're watching, what do you think is going to happen? Alright, let me show you. So, Arayo's spell number 1, Peer Through Depths. Spell number 2, opponent, unable to activate Glen. Also, he can get a 2/2 and attack me with it. Not a good plan, bud. So I tap Bloom Tender and snap. This card wins so many games, snapping my Terastodon back to my hand. I thought about, snapping Glen or this guy here, but I figured if I snap Terastodon back and clear the way for Edric, Glen can't counter Edric, and then I can just start smashing my way through these guys. I just need to get rid of my Terastodon, so I do. Untapping 2 lands, casting Remands, targeting Peer Through Depths. And I could have also alternately rifted one of these back to his hand. Same reasoning as before, but I decided, you know what? Let me just put that Peer Through Depths back in your hand and draw a card and see if I can find myself even more mana, which is what I'm really looking for. Flipped Arayo. Enjoy your 2/2 Drake, buddy. I know I am. So he decides the right play here is attack for 6. I don't know why. Maybe because he realizes he's suddenly in a precarious spot and he figures he's going to bum rush his way to victory. We'll find out. And I draw land. Thankfully, that Remand dug me down to the island this turn, so it turns out to have been correct. And because I am not quite ready to get my Edric down into play, I Viridian Shaman away this, slowing his clock down, and he's still unable to Glenelendra the dang thing. 2, 3, 4, 5. I am almost able to cast Terastodon, which he also will not be able to Glenelendra. So I send for some damage. Even though I don't draw cards, I'll take 9 points of your life. Not much of a race here. And my opponent looks at the board, and having briberied me down to just a Dryad Arbor in play, killing a Pod, and putting a Glenelendra into play with 2 mana, my opponent turns and scoops. I figured at the end of this turn what I'd do is I'd just cast Rift on Glen and let him sack the Glen to counter it, and then from there on my turn I was set. But because I had all these other things that he would want to be countering, and I would just run him out and then use Witness to pick up the best of whatever it was that was left over. Of course, you never know, I might have just top decked like Gilded Drake and said, oh, tasty, thanks for the Glenelendra. That's the other reason I really like Gilded Drake. It's a lot like Sower in that sense. When they get a Glen and you get a Drake and you just go, don't you wish you could counter this? And you hand them the Gilded Drake, and then suddenly you can counter their next spell. Although Glen will return to them if you do that, so you have to be careful. It's pretty cool anyway. I thought that was an epic conclusion. I was seriously fist pumping when that island showed up to my hand. I was in the process of organizing these cards, so what I will do is I'm just going to bring up the deck list here for you. And you can see what all's in Edric and the sideboard, of course. Here's the deck I played with. I hope you enjoyed this excessively long video. I appreciate you watching, and thanks to my son for adding his comments throughout. See you next time.